I make one small change in the code, it spends $15 million or it saves $2 million and drives more conversions. It was a drug because, all of a sudden I had the power of God in my hands. As GDPR, CCPA, wall gardens, and everybody took over, that number now sits at probably 0.5%. Almost no platforms allow you to track behavior. So we've developed a formal analytical framework called triangulation. Triangulation allows you to put all of these truths about a particular channel against a particular outcome in one line, and you can use that to triangulate to an investment decision. All the causal data has to be created. It doesn't exist anywhere.
Madan Bharadwaj has built 4 companies inside the attribution and measurement space, including Visual IQ and Measured. On this episode of Inside the Blurb, he breaks down why your attribution, MMM, and incrementality numbers never agree, and introduces Triangulation, his framework for turning 3 conflicting numbers into one decision. I'm Sean Simon. Let's get into it. Madan, welcome into the Matrix. How's it going?
Hello, Sean. Thank you for having me. A lot of fun to actually hang out with you on your podcast. I've seen you many times on LinkedIn, so it's an honor to be on this side of the podcast. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a fun one because you play in this space that is got to be the most painful piece of digital marketing. I mean, this measurement and attribution space, fragmentation. I mean, this is something that, God, when I was a media buyer in the mid 90s, we were like, are we sure this is working? And here we are, 2026 on the cusp of 2027, and we're still talking about it. So I want to get to that, but let's build up your credibility because your story arc, your career has been a little bit sadist, but take us through how you got to where you are today with M Squared. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get into this space and what set you up for success in it?
So it's very happenstance. I fell into it, honestly. It's not something I really planned. I came out of my computer science master's, just looking for regular computer science jobs. I did a couple of early machine learning jobs and whatnot. It's a classic sort of like machine learning, data science kind of work. Then I was looking for jobs on the sales side of advertising. At that time, Yahoo and Google were really sexy companies to work for. And I was really looking for a job there. I was actually gave a bunch of interviews. I was waiting for a job offer from Yahoo. What happened is I got an offer from an agency. Actually, it's called Aegis. Now it's called Dentsu. Earlier it's called Aegis. So Aegis offered me a job. I didn't know any better. So I just took it. And it led down a whole path. The quick sort of anecdote here is what happened is so until that point in my career, I had been working for classic technology companies. The company I worked for before is called MathWorks. It's a real research and engineering focused company built for scientists and engineers. So I'm used to being incredibly detail oriented. Everything is we would take like 10 data sets and optimize $100 worth of like some operational cost and something like that. It's kind of insane. So I walk into my very first day in this job at Aegis, and my manager tells me, hey, we do this thing called bidding for search keywords. It's called PPC bidding. We had a tool for that. You're the scientist who's going to come in and there's a scientist who used to work for this thing before and he left halfway. So we have no idea what this is doing. All the code is in MATLAB. You're a MATLAB guy, right? You'll figure it out. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll figure it out. I have no idea what the hell this thing is. And I show up and it's like, okay, where is this code running and what's it doing? It's spending about $10 million a month or something like that. And I'm thinking in my head, well, there's no way a machine is spending $10 million a month, right? I mean, clearly it says some recommendations, gives some recommendations. Some human being looks at it, rationalizes it, and probably takes some of it, doesn't take all of it or something like that. He's like, no. It just spends the money. And I'm like, this guy clearly is not fully representing his. But I'm very curious. I'm like, shit, I'm responsible for $10 million a month. That's got to be a massive number. I don't even know how many zeros are there. So I show up. And I'm like, where is this code running? He's like, yeah, it's right there. Where? I'm thinking I'm going to go back in the server room and there's this massive loud server room. I'm going to open up a box and really rip it apart. He's like, yeah, right under your desk. And I'm looking at this old little sort of machine. If you remember this, before laptops, we had these desktops. There
I
was a
remember.
tower. Remember the tower? There was a
Yeah.
tower, but it was almost like it was almost falling down. It was lying on the side, and I was like, why is it lying on the side? But the cable is loose. And I'm like, oh my God, this little machine that has it's kind of like 45-degree angle. That's the thing that's spending $10 million a month. Okay, this is cool. So I open up, I start getting into it. Ah, my God, I make one small change in the code, it spends $15 million, or it saves $2 million and drives more conversions. It was a drug because all of a sudden I had the power of God in my hands, and it was I got hooked on it, and I really got into ad tech early years. Then it really became more and more about measurement because I was a data science guy. My boss at the time, at that time, agencies genuinely believed that they could build technology and build technology companies inside the agency. It goes in cycles. Now we start to believe that again. At one period of time, agencies would not touch technology. So I was inside an agency, but they bought a technology, an ad server company called Blue Streak, and we were competing with what's the Google's ad server called? Um, uh,
Uh,
DoubleClick, right? DoubleClick.
oh yeah, they bought DoubleClick in the '90s. Yeah.
Yeah, DoubleClick
Yeah.
Fabric DFA. So we used to compete with DoubleClick, and we were of course second tier ad server. So we had that ad server in house, and we had a ton of data. You're talking about 2005, six timeframes. You're talking about terabytes of data back then. It was a lot of data. We could barely handle it. Okay, and he was like, "Hey, you're a smart guy. We do a ton of display, and we have display gets no clicks, no conversions. We're trying to sell display to our clients. Can you go figure out this attribution thing?" This was like early. I'm talking 2005, 6, 7 time frame. And I mean, multi-touch attribution, the words weren't even coined back then. So I was beginning to work on attribution at that time. Really figured out early multi-touch attribution. We built the very first algorithmic attribution models in the industry. 2008 or something like that. I had a full algorithmic MTA built. My unfortunate corollary to that is that I didn't sell one copy of that to a client. I did a lot of free work, a lot of consulting around it, but I couldn't sell it to one client. And eventually got hired by Visual IQ as the head of product for their multi-touch attribution sort of offering. They were about to just start, and then I got going on that. That was a great story. Now I got really into measurement. Built Visual IQ as one of the top MTA companies in this. We actually brought the category to life. There wasn't a category before that. There's a few companies. There was Visual IQ, Odometry, and a few other companies who created the space at the time, and then got into MMMs and incrementality testing and so on and so forth. So eventually became like an ad tech and measurement guy over a period of time, and led me to this unfortunate place where I've been working on measurement for 20 years. So I can talk about attribution measurement all day long, but anything else, your mileage varies.
You gave me an idea for another episode, which is talk about what agencies think they can do that they can't or shouldn't do, as we come first circle, because I've experienced that myself. And I thought you were going to say when the tower was tilted that it was working so hard that it needed more airflow, so it needed to pull the tower down. Okay, so that's fascinating, and I guess that makes sense, right? Like I know when I was buying media, we were buying hundreds of sites. There was no ad server, right? There was no. I was getting reports back every week from vendors, and I just laughed, and I laugh even more now because there's no way they knew this data. Like there just
Yeah.
wasn't an ad server. This
Yeah.
is like mid '90s, so this is 10 years before that. And so you kind of just were guessing, and at least that was for downloads, so you can track a little bit. But MTA seems like a natural, like, hey, I want to know like what the user journey is, right? Before I optimize my media, because common sense says there's a journey, right? So when you look at like 2005 to 2006 to 2026, like what's the biggest change? Because I know there's not a lot. There's a lot of things that are still being done the same, but like what's still being done the same in your mind, and what are the biggest changes in the way not only the attribution companies look at things, but the way the brands look at things?
So it's funny that the way you asked the question, right? Lot has changed, and lot is the same at the same time. There's like this thing that. So there's just a quick backstory, right? There was when I was at Visual IQ, I genuinely believed. Okay, if you remember in 2007, 8, 9 time frame was the time of the open internet. What's that big DSP SSP company that
Media Math in the
Media
in,
Math and Brian O'Kelly's company,
uh,
AppNexus, and so
AppNet. Oh yeah, AppNet.
so AppNexus had this idea of this open internet. You would have this open spec, open RTV spec, and the ad server would go on top of that, and we would be able to like grab every impression that's ever served. And the idea is that the ad server log file would be the consumer journey database. It would have every single interaction, and then that would give you all the power to be able to run algorithms and learn the consumer behavior and measure it and causal, all that stuff, right? And and at that time, I also genuinely believed that brands would have more power than publishers would, because we could understand the audience better than a publisher would, because now publisher got to see one slice of the behavior. We got to see a more longitudinal slice of the behavior across multiple different sites that they would visit. So I thought, wow, we have more information than the publisher. This is I lived in the buy side of advertising, so I thought this is going to be huge. There's a seismic shift here. Guess what? The seismic shift went the other way, because all the wall gardens came along, and Facebook and Snap and everybody put up wall gardens and said, "Wait a second, I don't want to give all this behavior data away. I want to monetize it." So they put big walls around it. They monetized it incredibly well, right? Facebook is just like a beast at how well they've done that, and so the pendulum swung very significantly the other way. So anyway, long story short, the opportunity to be able to do this full customer journey existed for a period of about 3 or 4 years, maybe I would say 5-7 years even, when you could track everything. You could actually put a pixel on Facebook. Imagine that. You could track. I remember working on AT&T campaigns where we had a Facebook campaign, a pixel on AT&T media on running on Facebook. So we would have billions of impressions pushed into log files and stuff like that, right? So minus stuff like TV, we could measure almost the entire digital footprint. As GDPR, CCPA, wall gardens, and everybody took over, that number now sits at probably 0.5%. Almost no platforms allow you to track behavior. You can put a click tag and track your first party data. So multi-touch attribution has more or less become a click path journey that happens on your site or your own properties, right? It's a very limited sort of a view of customer behavior right now than it used to be, right? But the point is that now, I remember 2007, 8, 9, 10 timeframe, most of the work was trying to educate people on this multi-touch and customer journeys and causality and incrementality and all that stuff. Marketers were like, this is like science project. I don't really want to take this on. I can kind of understand MTA, but incrementality is like it's a bridge too far. I'm not going there. And it was too much of a science project for them. Now, of course, everybody understands it. They understand causality, incrementality, and all that stuff. So the desire to want to go beyond last click is very clearly here. It's in your face. Almost, I don't have to educate any marketers as to why last click is broken. Okay, but last click is still here. It hasn't gone away. I've been fighting it for 25 years, and it's still here, and it's still the most obvious tracking currency we have. And a lot of what we are now doing is figuring out, well, if your last click is blah, what is the true value of that? Is it more or less than last click? If you're clearly lower funnel, you're over attributing to yourself. So clearly you're taking too much credit. So you have to kind of get a haircut on your credit. Whereas if you're upper funnel, if you're podcast or TV or CTV or something like that, you don't have enough credit, so you need like a little bit more of a leg up on the credit. So that is what causal attribution is all about. That's definitely changing. So, but last click is still here. Education has come a long way. I think marketers are a lot more educated today than they ever were. That's what's changed. But the fundamental tracking infrastructure that we put down in the early 2000s and the late 1990s is still here. It hasn't gone away. So.
All right, let me ask you some questions based on that. So I heard you say MTA is dead. You didn't say that, but I did. But at the same time, you said it's still there. Why do you think brands, I see this all the time too, like we know it's broken. We know it's an inaccurate way of measuring, but why do you think brands keep going back to it? They know it's not accurate. And I know it's easy, but like, there's got to be more to it.
Well, so much education has gone into it, right? Imagine I was evangelizing multi-touch attribution in 2008, 2009. I would go to conferences, talk about that, right? So we built companies around it. There's like probably like tons and tons of like literature pumped out about multi-touch attribution. Now, anybody researching it today is going to find a shit ton of like materials around multi-touch attribution. So, up and coming marketers, people who are early into the space, or people who are just learning about attribution from just Google searches and whatnot, they're going to find a lot of MTA literature, and it's kind of natural that it has a life of its own now, right? That's probably most of why you find that marketers are still leaning on MTA. Okay, but a lot of times, what you will find is that the more educated marketers, that's the top 5%, they understand multi-touch attribution is incomplete, but they think of it as two real sort of classes of studies. One is customer journey studies, which is where multi-touch sits, and causal studies, which is where MMM and incrementality testing kind of sit. And there's value for both. Clearly, understanding the true causal impact of media and marketing on business outcomes, that's really the real currency on which they want to invest. But if I come back and tell you something like, hey, Sean, I know you spent $1 million last month. Probably about $200,000 was on CTV. Rest of it was on Facebook and Google. I think the CTV attribution significantly better than Facebook and Google. The ROAS is like 3 times more than the classic channels. You should move all your budgets on CTV. You're going to be like, dude, wait a second. I mean, I'm not comfortable doing that. I need more evidence than just some cockamamie model you just put together in the last week. I mean, I've had this data for a long time, and I've not done anything with it. So, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm not done anything with it. And therefore, give me more evidence. So that's where multi-touch attribution is helpful, where if you can show some journey, even if it's not perfect, if you can show some sort of evidence of like some sort of click behavior or browsing behavior from channels that are not Facebook and Google, that's driving upper funnel activity and all that stuff, they have more faith in being able to make the investment decision, right? So they're looking for some more evidence of trackable behavior, and that's where MTA kind of, the educated marketers get there. The more uneducated marketers are like, well, that's all I can find. I didn't know any different because I was doing a Google search and I found a bunch of MTA, is what they're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So let's focus more on the causal side. But you said earlier that incrementality was difficult for people to understand, and to me, it always seemed like this must be the way measurement was always done, right? Because you can, even if it was newspapers or magazines, you just put the ad in. Let's take magazines. You distribute it in magazines that go to certain geos, and you don't put it in magazines that go to other geos, and you see where your sales come from. That seems pretty easy to understand. So why do people find it so difficult?
The concept at that level is very easy to explain, and which is why it's gotten adoption. You can explain it in about 15 seconds as to what you're doing. People instantly get what this is about. But in reality, what you're doing is you're testing on real human beings. And all incrementality, MMM, all of measurement is about measuring human behavior, right? And more specifically, we're measuring our ability to change human behavior, right? We're showing them a piece of creative and asking for their money, right? I mean, that's a pretty difficult thing to do. And we're trying to measure how much our ability to influence people to actually part with their money. Now, I mean, these are real human beings you're testing with. So you don't get clean results, right? It's not like a machine where you say, I'm going to put 30% more spend here, 30% less spend here, and these consumers are going to just spend more and less here. It turns out that you don't get that kind of a clean results when you work with real human beings in sort of social sciences. It's kind of very noisy, right? And so many variables. You can only control some variables. So many variables to it. So what we typically do is that we make sure that the power of the test is significantly greater than what you're trying to measure. You're not trying to move the needle by 1%, 0.5%, 2%. You're trying to move it by 10%, 15%, right? You can always back into what might be a profitable execution, but for measurement purposes, you want to think of it like a hammer as opposed to a little scalpel, because the signals are very noisy. You want to get past the noise, so to speak. And what you'll find is that many marketers, when I talk to them, they'll ask, I mean, it seems kind of simple for me to find a few markets and hold it out. Why do I need you? Well, it turns out they'll hold out a few markets and it looks the same before, after, control test. Everything looks about the same and it's super noisy. They're like, I don't know what I got from this, right? So to design a proper, what we call a feasible test, it takes a fair amount of expertise, and also it takes a fair amount of what do you want to call it, benchmark data and stuff like that, to be able to say, what am I expecting in terms of outcomes? And that's a thing into the future. You haven't done the test yet. So estimating that and designing the test for those outcomes, and also backing into a decision from it, which is, if you get these outcomes, what would you do differently? Let's actually design the decision too right now. So what happens is you kind of go through the whole process of making a decision with a test before the test itself. What happened? That's a fairly involved process. When you go through that, what you find is that you probably won't run the test at least half the time, because you know what the decision is going to be, and you're like, well, it's either too good or too bad, and it's not worth even going through the effort. And the rest of the time is when you actually go through the effort, and then you have to cross a lot of little sort of mountains to get to a good answer. So it's harder than it looks deceptively. And if you don't have good expertise backing your execution, you might end up with a lot of time spent. And time is the most precious resource for everybody, right? Spending 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and finding that you got nothing, that hurts more than the actual money. You could have spent a bunch of money. People can get that back. Time is what is very hard to get back, and people don't want to burn time. Is what, even if they don't say it, that's what is they actually usually express in conversation.
Do you ever feel like marketers come to you with a gut feeling, like they know what media is driving what? Like they have their common sense, right? Tells them,
Yes.
their experience tells them, I believe that this is probably the right attribution. Now they're just looking for data to support their own belief. And is that a bad thing or a good thing? Because the way you just described incrementality testing, it sounds like a good thing, but I would have thought that's a bad thing, because you can skew the test if you have
Good marketers, right, Sean? I think all good marketers have a visceral understanding of how their marketing programs are doing. Like, if I'm a marketer for my own brand, like, I have a pretty good visceral understanding of how my content and my efforts are being felt in market by my prospects and my customers, right? And so what I'm looking for is an understanding of giving data that gives me some calibration for that, for my sort of lived experience, so to speak, as a marketer, right? That's what most good marketers, I've learned this from like the senior folks that I've worked with. They have in their bones an understanding of what's working, what's not working. I mean, they can't obviously get a very tight calibration on that, but they have a very good sense for it. So when I bring insights that are either calibrates it, they're like, yeah, okay, I got it. Like, a good example would be, I used to work with a fantastic CEO for a fashion brand. And I would go back to him and say, hey, I've done the modeling of the testing, and all these new programs that you had in market drove 30% top line growth for you. Well, within about 30 seconds, you'll be like, well, this is August. Last August, I didn't have these programs. I had those programs. And those programs, according to my own math, had this much in like top line. So right now, my top line's up by 25%. You're saying it's 32%. Okay, you know what? You're in the ballpark. Okay, maybe, so I kind of trust these numbers. Instant 30 seconds, you'd get to that place very quickly, and you very quickly go back to unit economics. Okay, if that makes sense, what's the cost of media, what's the cost of promos, what's the cost of shipping, this and that? Am I making money, losing money on that, right? If you're an actual most good marketers are also general managers. They understand the business, they can actually run the business, so quickly they're like, okay, this makes sense, I can keep this going, and so on and so forth. And also, if I come back with a counterintuitive read that I say, oh, this thing doesn't work at all, they'll be like, instantly they'll pause me and be like, I don't buy that. How is it true? I felt this in the business. Why do you say that? Then they'll unpack my numbers closely and whatnot, right? So that's an important thing. In fact, I was presenting at a conference day before yesterday, and I had a client who was presenting with me. And interesting, I'll tell you that I would present to this particular client. His name is Ian. I worked with him across 3 or 4 of his jobs, and I would present to him some MMM numbers, and he would bring like completely different point of view to that reads. He'll be like, okay, these are high LTV customers, low LTV customers. Very likely this is because the high LTV customers are buying bedding and bed sheets and sort of like bed sets. So your low LTV customers are probably buying robes, is what I'm thinking, because these are one-off products I sell. These are products that people buy and sort of, they keep buying it over and over again. So the LTV is probably higher here than here. So I need to understand which channels that you are reporting to be working for these customers is those customers, because the creative has to match with it, right? So instantly he is applying the insights to his business. It's not a paint by numbers. He is taking those insights, he is merging it with his understanding of the business, and he is coming back with a strategy that is informed with data. It's not like, blindly just allocating budgets, but kind of informing it with data. Those are the best marketers. When they use it like that, you will clearly see that. I've seen one of my brands that I worked with, when I started working with them, they were about $5-7 million in revenue, GMV. In 5 years, I saw them go to $200 million in revenue, right? And data is one part of the story, but this founder had significantly good understanding of his own business and go to market. So he was able to take my data, apply it to his understanding, calibrate it, and drive strategy with it. And then that's how you get this outsized outcomes from data and management.
Sounds more of like an organizational alignment as opposed to just focusing on one aspect of it.
Yeah, you
In a vacuum.
no, that's right. You got it.
Do you find that marketers today are more interested in understanding the data, where maybe 20 years ago they were like, this is data science stuff, and then today it's like, hey, I'm a CMO, I need to understand the math? Do you find that to be true?
Understand the insights almost certainly, right? I think if you go back 20 years, I would mostly run to creative folks. If you're a marketer, you're kind of like, you actually like a bar data. If I put a big spreadsheet in front of you, they'll think that I'm the idiot in the room, because you know we don't run marketing like this. Why would you put a big spreadsheet? That's not how it works. It's the old classic Mad Men era of marketing, where people would come with big creative ideas. Now, I would say all the tenured CMOs are significantly into understanding customer behavior and insights. They still don't care about the core data science. They just want to know, like how you and I may understand a car, right? I don't know how a car works. I have some idea of what it needs. It needs like gas and oil or whatever it is, but I don't know what the fluid mechanics are. I know the purpose of it, but I'm not an expert, something like that. So I'm the core turbo engine or whatnot. They don't fully understand what I do, but they understand my purpose. Why do I exist, and what role I'm supposed to play in their organization? And they point me in the right place. They'll be like, you need to solve this problem, not that problem. Don't solve retention for me. That's not your problem. Solve acquisition for me. Or the opposite. Actually, I don't care about either. I care about unit economics. How do they come together? And what's the blended LTV CAC ratios? I need a good handle on that, because that's what my most important problem is. They quickly identify the most important problem and they point me at that problem. And my job is to go figure out that problem for them. That's how they direct folks like me into their business.
So talk about a term you used a couple times earlier, causal, right? You put MMM and incrementality in this causal bucket. Elaborate. Like, obviously, causal means something caused it. I get that, but there's more to it, right? When you think about it in terms of measurement. So help us understand what causal means and how that aligns with MMM and incrementality.
Yeah, so in the world that we live in today, measurement world, Sean, there is correlational, causal. Okay, now all the classic attribution data sets, last click, first click, platform attribution, UTM attribution, app attribution, footfall traffic attribution, those are all correlational techniques. What you're trying to do is you're trying to attach an impression event to some sort of a conversion event. And if the same user, same device, some sort of like identity was able to like match the two, that is basically what is called attribution. Now, it's clearly very correlational. So what happens is you have all the biases attached to it. If you keep, it's like the Google example, everybody's going to search before they convert. So you end up having over attribution for Google. Whereas if you work with like a really upper funnel provider, like something like, podcasts or Yelp or TV or something like that, you might see an ad for something and get inspired. You may not act on it for 45 days. And there's no attribution possible. So you completely lose the true causal driver of that behavior, right? So this is all what's called, we call it base attribution or correlational attribution, base attribution. And then on this side is all the causal attribution, which is, there are only two causal techniques in the industry. One is called incrementality testing. One is called marketing mix modeling. Now, incrementality testing is a gold standard for causality. So, it's always been across industries, not just marketing. What you do is you design a proper test and control experiment. You have control where you don't intervene, test you actually intervene, and you look at the outcomes in first party data, the client's own sales data or traffic data or whatever it is, right? So there you see the outcomes. You don't care what the attribution is. You just simply measure the outcomes. And typically these are called studies, an incrementality study, an MMM study and whatnot, right? And then what you do is that you take these measurements, you bounce it with your base attribution. And so what is like a search report in terms of total outcomes? And the search might report that, oh, brand search drove 40% of the outcomes because that's what the attribution is. But actually, when you look at the incrementality, it might be 5%. So 5 over 40 is what we call the multiplier. Now you can apply this multiplier to daily reporting and estimate the causal impact of brand search, non-brand search, Facebook, TV on your business. And that's really the new currency that we're seeing emerge for understanding outcomes. And because all of these multipliers are now reporting outcomes in the brand's own outcome currency. New customers, repeat customers, high value customers, low value customers, retail, e-commerce, so on and so forth. Now, what happens? You have different multipliers for different outcomes. Now, this becomes a currency that normalizes all channels into their brand currency and what the outcomes they can estimate. It's really becoming more and more of how they think about the business and think about investing in it.
Okay, I want to get into what makes M Squared different than others, and I think it's important here because on blurbs, it's probably our single largest category. Even the subcategories under ad measurement and attribution are quite large. Some vendors are in multiple ones, some aren't. And if I had to create a hypothesis based on this question, from what I heard from you up to now is range, right? You have this really wide range of experience from 20 years ago to today across different types of measurements and different types of tests. Like a lot of, I can imagine how many tests you've run in the last 20 years. That range gives you, Madan, personally, this really deep understanding of what can impact a good test from a bad test and all the data within that test. So really quick, let me read your blurb, and then I want to dig into that. So M Squared helps marketers align spending with financial outcomes by replacing opaque models with transparent causal proof of what actually drives growth. It distinguishes itself through a proven framework that combines rigorous incrementality testing with AI-led customer or consumer research, ensuring decisions are grounded in verifiable data rather than platform claims or hunches. So peel that apart for me.
Yeah, so the two big concepts there as to what makes us unique and differentiated, Sean. One is that there is no one single holy truth when it comes to measurement, because ultimately measurement is measuring actual human behavior under the hood. So if you measure it through incrementality testing as opposed to MMM, it's going to come back with slightly different answers or meaningfully different answers, and they could both be true. And the context could be slightly different. Incrementality testing is measuring a point in time. MMM is measuring a more longitudinal, a long-term sort of average effect, and so on and so forth. Whereas last-click attribution is measuring the very last touch behavior. Multi-touch is measuring the sort of the more 2 or 3 touch customer journey, and so on and so forth. So each one of these are truths about customer behavior. Right? They're not necessarily false. They're all true in their own way. So what we have done is that we've developed a formal analytical framework called triangulation. So triangulation allows you to put all of these truths about a particular channel against a particular outcome in one line. So you can look at UTM attribution, platform attribution, MMM attribution, incrementality estimated attribution, or post-purchase survey sort of supported attribution, all in one line. And now you can have all the truths kind of like in one place, and you can use that to triangulate to an investment decision. Right, almost all of this is about making decisions. Right now, there is the measurements genuinely not about understanding the point of life or whatever. It's about making investment decisions, right? If you're trying to understand life perfectly, life is too complex. Human behavior is too complex for us to like just write it on a scorecard or on a spreadsheet. What we're trying to do is say, do I have enough signal to be able to make an investment decision? Increase, decrease, hold, or whatever go-to-market strategy I have on a full funnel strategy. Can I understand the role of this particular channel, let's say Facebook or CTV, in driving the overall business? And therefore, can I invest with confidence, right? That decision, can I support with all of this different touch points or different measurements I have against the channel, is what we are trying to do. And it requires it's a complex problem, even though the idea of triangulation is kind of instantly understandable. Oh, I'm triangulating and understanding the true behavior. Instantly understandable. The data is never apples to apples. The way you track post-purchase survey and the taxonomy in which you'll get results is different than how you would have modeled in MMM, and different than how you've tested in incrementality, and very different than how UTM is reporting, very different than how platforms are reporting. So trying to get them in one line so you can look at them in as one atomic unit for a particular channel, super challenging. But if you can do it, and we've kind of figured out the right product and accounting framework for it, now you get the best information to support decisions. Now, why that's important is because all this data and measurement is not about making one decision. It's about making decisions across the entire organization. Maybe with the CMO is making an investment decision at the cross-channel level, and then she hands it off to her team, and somebody is executing the buy, and they need to make decisions with platform metrics. And once they do that, maybe the finance person has to forecast with these metrics, and independently the CEO has to present a story to the board, and everybody is having a different angle into this data, and you need to have a set of shared truths that all come together so you can get the organization moving behind an overall strategy, right? So having to get the sort of alignment dividend is very hard. It's very hard to get everybody moving in the same direction. If you can, you get momentum for the business where everybody is marching toward the same direction. That's what we're all trying to do. If we just march in one direction in a way that's data supported, we're going to win in a big way. And that requires us to have faith in the approach and have faith in a scientific approach to looking at the data and be able to make data supported decisions and whatnot, where we're not just holding on to our truths and say, oh, search is really strong according to platform attribution, so I won't give up credit. And no, that's not the way to think about it. Search plays a role as part of a go-to-market, and you play a role along with the CTV person to kind of drive outcomes together. So there's a role to play. And now when you kind of broaden your understanding and get past the political divides, all of a sudden your team is working as one unit, and that's where you can get significant momentum for the business.
It feels like there's a complexity to it and an art that having that range, having that experience isn't something that you can you can rely on a platform dashboard to do for you. You or someone on your team needs to understand the data to know if it even looks right before you even dig into it and figure out how to make decisions based on it. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair. So the data has context to it. So to be able to understand the context of the data and against what outcomes you're looking to drive, that's an incredibly important part. And what you will realize as more and more marketers kind of sort of do this is that it's not a one and done. It's not one model. It's not one test. It's about building a program where you keep continuously learn and compound learnings on each other. So every time you learn something, and that spawns off some decisions and more questions, you kind of go explore those questions, learn answers on that. So now these two answers compound on each other. Now you're able to make better decisions across more surfaces in the business and so on and so forth. You keep doing that for 3, 4, 5 cycles. Now you're going to understand your consumers and your business significantly better in 3 quarters than you are right now. And having to have the discipline to approach it like that, like a program, is the big unlock. And we call it the Causal Insights program. We modeled it after customer insights programs inside, organizations like Amazon or Orange Theory or whatnot. So we've studied that, and we've identified that, there is actually a program structure that brings together, all of these different disparate understandings of the business into one insights program And you might use consumer insights, you might use measurement and reporting and data and all of that together to understand the business holistically. And that is critically what you need so that you can bring all the insights together and drive one direction for the business. And we call it the causal insights.
It feels like, unlike any other category, I mean, I know other categories could say the same thing, but particularly in this category, a smart, educated marketer is a better customer for you because there's complexity to it, right? And you have to understand the data, not just the math, right? How do you make sure
Yeah.
that your clients
Yeah.
understand everything that we're talking about here today when it comes to their own data?
Yeah, I mean, so what I realized doing, in fact, that's my whole go to market's anchored on education. What I find is that there's no freaking way I can explain all this complexity in a 30-minute sales call. It's just not possible. It's not fair to the problem we are solving. I mean, it's the most valuable problem for everybody driving growth, right? It's the what everybody strives for, and you're trying to inspire your customers to adopt you as part of their business or their lives and whatnot. That's significant. That is the most valuable problem to be solving, right? And it's not easy, and it's different for every customer. So there is an approach to it. There's a framework to it, but there's not like a mousetrap. Okay, so I've kind of fully embraced the idea that you can still simply build a mousetrap for growth. You have good frameworks, you have to apply the framework. There can be tools, good tools, but you need tools and services to drive the eventual outcomes that businesses have to drive. And you need a ton of education to even understand what we're talking about. So I've taken a very opposite approach to my go-to-market, which is to be fully open kimono about all the methods and the approaches and the data science and how they all come together. So we teach this. We teach a class around advanced attribution. At least 4 or 5 times a year, we put together a full class, and we do at least 2 or 3 workshops in a quarter, where we talk about this for half a day, bring case studies and practitioners together to talk about this in a very transparent way. So, long story short, how do I ensure that I get good customers? I go out and talk about this, and customers self-select the folks who are educated and sort of more elevated in their thinking about the space. They naturally come to me, and there are other folks who are just simply don't, they just work with Facebook, and they're like, listen, I don't need advanced attribution for me to just work with one channel. I'm just writing Facebook as much as I can write it. And I do live studies here and there. That's good enough for me. That's great. In fact, I would genuinely say, yeah, maybe that's good enough for you. I'm too much of a bazooka for you. But as you get closer and closer to more sophisticated cross channel, and you kind of get to the point all the low hanging fruits are gone, you need a more deliberate approach for driving growth consistently over many quarters. A repeatable scientific approach for it, which is where I sort of become a option for that.
Is there a minimum number of channels a brand should be working in before they even consider a solution like M Squared?
Yeah, usually they get past at least Facebook and Google. If they're just Facebook and Google, usually they're happy with the last click attribution, UTM attribution, and they're mostly like, what, this is too. I don't need. I'm selling whatever it is. I'm selling widgets or T-shirts or whatever it is, and I'm buying mostly Facebook and Google, and I'm only spending $5 million a year or something like that. Okay, you're not. I'm not a great candidate for you. As you get to, well, I got there, but it stopped working for me, or CPMs are like these guys are just robbing me on the CPMs and CPCs. I need to find a better way that's more profitable because I'm losing money right now. Now you're trying to solve a real hard, profitable growth problem. Then you have to solve the hard problems. All the easy sort of like stuff goes away, and then you have hard problems. That's when I become more and more relevant for their practice.
Yeah, and it feels like this is not a problem that AI can solve, right? Maybe there's some usefulness in sort of moving data around, but large language models read languages, not math, right? And there's a lot of art and science and experience necessary to make this work.
The AI, all AI is doing is that it only has access to the data you have. It cannot. All the causal data has to be created. It doesn't exist anywhere because what you track and what you have readily available is last click attribution, platform attribution, UTM attribution, whatnot, and they're all biased. Okay. Now, for you to get data that is actually representative of causal outcomes in the business, you have to run incrementality studies. You have to run MMM, and you have to build the right MMM, build the multipliers, get the reporting, and now AI can use that data to then come back with results that are more meaningful. So there is a lot of work that you have to build up, and a database of causal outcomes that you have to build up. Then you can use AI to get faster and faster with the analysis. But this part is the hard part. You have to build up the database, which is what we work with clients to do. And then we also have an AI that sits on top of it. But if you take this AI and put it on top of Google Analytics, it's going to spew nonsense at you, right? And you wouldn't know any different because it's creating 100 pages of reports so let me have a great example for you. I actually work with the CMO right now. So this guy is an AI, sort of like a native person. Okay, he is an operating partner in a fund. He's also a CMO. He goes and takes on CMO roles within the portfolio companies. I mean, he is constantly talking about AI. Okay, so he's a big OpenClaw fan. Okay, he loves OpenClaw. He got OpenClaw to work, and he showed me all the reports and what it does. It's very cool, super cool, right? He's automated half his life, so I'm a big fan. In fact, I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But one time he has a big Amazon business. He sells beauty products on Amazon. And he had OpenClaw run Robin for him. And Robin, so the OpenClaw Robin model came back and said, well, there's no incrementality in your for Amazon spend. So cut all your spend. And he has some $25 million worth of spending going into Amazon. He's like sweating bullets. He's like, I'm not going to cut $25 million on some AI model that it ran in 3 seconds. I'm like, Madan, how do I understand this? And I showed him, I said, hey, here is how to build these models. There's something called variable selection and feature engineering. You have to try different features and figure out which is the right features for control, which is the right features for that are drivers. You got to control for all of these things, and you have to build ensembles and blah, blah. And then you have to then analyze all of them together to get to the model structure that you have the most faith in. And then you go figure out how to make decisions with it. And he took a deep breath and be like, okay, all right, so I do have to bring you on. So then I got okay. So we built ASIN level models for him. Every SKU was called an ASIN in Amazon. We built hundreds of models, and it turned out the answer was like significantly more nuanced than what the OpenClaw model found out. It turns out that there are about 1/4 of the SKUs that actually was super incremental, where media was meaningfully driving the business. Another sort of 1/4 was useless, and another sort of 50% that was like, in some context it worked, some context it didn't whatnot. So we were able to give a much more calibrated investment strategy. Now take the $25 million and like reallocate it towards the ASINs that were actually working. And now he's got a path to grow the business meaningfully because of that. And now he also has an understanding of what does what, and he's able to use that more effectively. So point is, AI is a great tool for me because I know how to deploy an AI and get more automation and speed for my execution. But somebody who's not fully understanding, like if a doctor can use AI to figure out how to diagnose and prescribe something. You and I, we just give it our blood test and say, oh, you've got cancer. You need to go under the scanner right now and have your wife cut you up and whatnot. That's how kind of.
You still need some domain expertise. I want to wrap with when is your next class? Because I personally wouldn't mind attending it because this is fascinating. But for anyone listening, when is your next class? Where is it?
Yeah.
Why should they come?
Yeah.
I know it's not a sales pitch, it's really just education.
Yes, my next workshop is September 10th. It's in Boston. It's an in-person workshop. So anybody who's interested, it's on the site. Just go and find me. It's called M Squared Collective. So we bring together the best experts into a collective, and then we teach it openly. So it's on 10th. It's in Boston. We're doing it in Seaport. It's a beautiful time in Boston. So if anybody wants to come, I'd love to have you in the room. And then we're probably going to do one more in the quarter, and probably after that is CES. We're probably going to do one in Vegas in CES, so we can get as much distribution for the evangelism that we're trying to orchestrate.
Any particular reason someone should come to the one in September versus waiting till next year? Any unique characteristics to this session?
One, so this particular one, we're executing an interesting program where all the mid funnel, upper funnel publishers are all pretty beaten up. If you're not Facebook and Google, you're getting beaten up every day. So they're saying, hey, causal outcomes, we embrace it with open arms. So they're coming in and saying, hey, to anybody coming to the workshop, they're willing to put some meaningful budgets on the table for a test through ad credits and added value media, as long as it's executed as part of an incrementality test. So we're executing that program in September 10th. So you come in, you meet the publishers you want to work with. They put some meaningful dollars on the table. It all gets executed as part of an incrementality test. So everybody wins. We figured out how much business outcomes it drives. Publishers are happy, brands are happy. I'm happy because I get to be the measurement vendor for that. So it's a fun program. We're having a lot of fun orchestrating that. So yeah, if you're a brand thinking about outcomes, I think I've got a nice 24 hours for you in Boston.
Sounds like a no-brainer. Get paid to come to Boston in a beautiful time of the year.
That's right. It's a great time in Boston. Yes, absolutely.
All right. But Don, this has been great. I loved having you in the Matrix. I feel like we could talk for hours more, but let's wrap it there.
Thank you so much, Sean. Much appreciate the invite. Look forward to doing more of this in the future.
Love it. Take care, man. Good luck on September 10th. I won't forget it. It's my mother's birthday.
Okay, right. Great. Thank you.
Take care, Madan.
Thank you. All right. I'm staying here, right?